was in Egypt land. Let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand. Let my people go.
Like everybody who's out there watching us, wherever you are, in Texas or Arizona, New York, Canada, or in Israel, we're celebrating the life of Meir Kahane for the next couple of hours. Meir was born in Brooklyn in 1932, and his entire family, dating back to the 1st century, were notable scholars, rabbis, and writers of great Jewish works. In fact, they could trace the family back to the 1st century sage, Eliezer ben Azariah. After Rabbi Meir Kahane completed his rabbinic studies, he then got a law degree. Then he got a master's degree in international relations from New York University. We'll have some guests with us today. Meir Jolovitz wrote an amazing piece, which was published yesterday on Arutz Shiva. He'll talk more about it, but basically, to quote him, it was a life ended abruptly in the struggle to awaken a nation that had taken to slumber only a generation after the greatest tragedy. He was an iconoclastic firebrand, left his mark wherever he walked, wherever he talked. There was no place Rabbi Kahane would be afraid to go, nor was he ever left unsaid if he had something to say. We have many guests with us tonight, including these four. Some others will join us later. We have Sharon and Taylor, Meir Jolovitz. We have Fern Seidman, editor of Jewish Voice, as well as Baruch Ben Yosef. And Rabbi Rosenberg will be joining us also.
Their nightmare is that will Kahane become the prime minister?
You don't really believe you're going to be prime minister, Rabbi Kahane?
I hope that I'll be the prime minister to save the Jews from the Arabs and from themselves.
A quiet man, a special man was he. He sacrificed his life to speak his mind. A righteous man, a pious man, a caring man, a sharing man, more committed than a man could be. An honest man, a haunted man was he. He saw his people suffering needlessly. He saw the cause, he knew the cure, he told the truth, his motives pure. He filled the skies with his entreaty. Never will there be a better man than me. Never will we have a better friend for eternity. A patient man, a humble man was he. He couldn't rest, his soul was never free. A loving man, a mystic man, a daring man, a driven man, his people were his only ecstasy. Never will there be a better man than me. Never will we have a better friend for eternity. Truth and honesty were the key. He took his message over land and sea. He left behind his legacy, a guiding light for all humanity. A gentleman, a giant man was he. His mission gave him strength and energy. He feared no one, faced anyone. He shared his thoughts with everyone. The only thing he feared was apathy. A tortured man, a tireless man was he. He could not rest, though he was so weary. He met his fate one dark day. A man of hate took him away. His message will not die, we hope and pray. Never will there be a better man than me. Never will we have a better friend for eternity. Never will there be a better man than me.
At the very beginning of the little introduction, you might have noticed Go Down Moses. That was being sung by Arlo Guthrie, and many may not realize that Meir Kahane was Arlo Guthrie's bar mitzvah teacher. Arlo Guthrie's mother was a Yiddish poet, and they called his bar mitzvah Hut Natni Bar Mitzvah, and he was very proud to be trained by Meir Kahane.
Never will we have a better friend for eternity. Never will there be a better man.
In honor of Rabbi Meir Kahane, tonight's sponsors include, and just let me interject quickly before I introduce our host for the evening, that as we all know in Judaism, we don't mourn the death, we celebrate the life. So I don't want anybody to ever misinterpret any comments which may seem in jest at this solemn time, but there's always time for Meir Kahane to talk about sponsors who he would probably be proud of. And of course, the Iron Dome. And there we have the Iron Dome. And there's BDS, of course, which is to buy Israeli products, donate to Israeli causes, and support Israel. So he would certainly support BDS. And my final sponsor for this evening is a concealed carry talit bag. Don't leave home without it. Well, without any further ado, I'm about to introduce Meir Halevi Weinstein, a personal friend and student of Kahane. And don't forget to help support your sponsor this evening, which is israelnotnow.ca, a Never Again Live podcast. Meir, take it away.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being with us. I'm gonna ask everyone who's participating and watching, viewing the event, this important event, if you could please share the link, share the event on your various platforms that you have on social media, be it Facebook, be it Twitter, Instagram, whatever platforms you're on. We'll reach a lot more people. This is an important message that we have to get across. The life of Rabbi Meir Kahane, what he stood for, what his message is, and how relevant it is today. And we have important people who are going to be joining us who have been associates of the rabbi for many years. And it only seems like a short while ago that our rabbi was murdered. 1990, 31 years ago. I remember the day. I'm sure everyone on this program understands and remembers the day and thinks about what they were doing that day, how it affected them going forward. Yesterday in shul, in all shuls, in all synagogues, we read the Parsha of Vayera. And in the Parsha, there's many different occurrences that happen. One that stands out, so much actually stands out, is the Akedah. So Abraham goes with Yitzchak to Mount Moriah, and they go with two aides who are with them, Elazar and Ishmael. And they have a donkey with them as well. And they look up to the place, and Abraham sees the place, and Isaac sees the place. But Ishmael And Elazar, they don't. So Avram says, you stay there with the donkey. That's where you belong. Because what Abraham saw, what Isaac saw, was the Jewish destiny. And what is the place that they even saw? They saw the Temple Mount, where the temple stands, where temples did stand. And that's the Jewish destiny. And when you have this truth from God, and you know what the truth is, nothing's going to deter you. And that was the message of Rabbi Kahane, that there is a Jewish ideal, that the Torah is true. And if you want a Jewish state, and that's what we want, and that's what Rabbi Kahane wrote about and spoke about and struggled for, a Jewish state, then it must be defined, and you must take measures to work for that Jewish state. What's going on today in Israel is that exact same struggle. You have this coalition in Israel that reached out to Arab parties, and they say that is the way to build a Jewish state. That may be the way to build an Israeli state, but that's not the way to build a Jewish state, as we have seen in the past week, even in Israel, or the past 10 days in Israel. Last week, there was a rally in an Arab town in Israel called Al-Fahim, where they had a pro-Hamas rally. Israeli Arabs, thousands of Israeli Arabs waving Hamas flags. You have an Arab terrorist in an Israeli hospital, the Kaplan Hospital, and you have Israeli Arab medical staff that are posing and taking pictures with this Arab Hamas terrorists. You have people who have been promoted into the defense committee, Israeli Arabs, that are posing for pictures with one of the main imams from the Temple Mount, who no longer is allowed on the Temple Mount because of his open support for Hamas and his open declarations that Israel should be destroyed. The list goes on, and this is just short. There have been buses in Jerusalem the past week, stoned. Israelis, Israeli Jews, hiding in the bus from the possibility of a stone coming through the window, a rock actually coming through the window, injuring them, severely injuring them, maybe killing them. This is just a little bit of what Rabbi Kahane spoke about. And if you want a Jewish state, you certainly don't promote people who want the demise of the Jewish state. We're going to get into a lot today. So that's the picture of medical staff at the Kaplan Hospital, Arab Israeli nurses taking selfies with this Hamas terrorists. It's outrageous. It's infuriating. And the left in Israel thinks it's the greatest thing. We have Rabbi Bernard Rosenberg, who's with us, and he's going to have to leave very soon to an unveiling. So he wants to say a few words. We would like him to say a few words. So maybe he could jump in now and speak a little bit about his relationship with the rabbi and what the rabbi means to him. Is Rabbi Rosenberg on?
He's not presently queued in.
Okay.
So, but as soon as he does, I'll alert you and I'll put him right on the screen.
Maybe he had to run off to this unveiling. He just said that he's got a little bit of time to join us for this event, so I'd give him that opportunity. Okay, so well, we also have, I believe, a live feed from Israel from the event that's going on in the hall in Jerusalem. But I have Baruch and Yosef, who can we show a little bit? They're just getting underway in Jerusalem. We'll be showing throughout this event, zooming back and forth into the event so everyone could be aware of what's happening in Israel, how the support is only increasing in Israel for Rabbi Kahane, and everyone, many are saying Rabbi Kahane was right. So we have my friend from the JDL, Baruch Ben Yosef, with us also. So we could bring Baruch on, and Baruch could let us know. First, he could let us know his personal feelings about Rabbi Meir Kahane, and he could also let us know what the momentum is like in Israel, that people are coming around to accept that Rabbi Kahane was right. Baruch, how are you?
Doing great. How are you, Meir?
Thank God. Hope to be there in the next month.
Okay. We'll roll out the red carpet for you.
Amen.
My thoughts on Rabbi Kahane. I spoke at the cemetery in front of the people that came out to the cemetery to show respect to the rabbi, and I basically said to the people that I knew two Rabbi Kahanas. I knew one Rabbi Kahane who was an activist in the streets, and I knew Rabbi Kahane from sitting with him in jail and learning Torah from him. Two different people. The man that sat in jail and learned Torah and taught us Torah was very calm. He taught Torah in a way that that we could really learn and get the most out of his lessons, his classes. The man outside of jail was constantly on the move. He was constantly active. He never stopped for a moment. He barely slept. And he would tell us all the time, there is no time. There is no time. He would say that we only have certain opportunities, certain windows of opportunity that God opens up for us and gives us the chance to change the destiny of the Jewish people and the destiny of the world. And if we don't act immediately, then those windows close, those windows of opportunity. And then what happens is it becomes much more difficult to continue to achieve those things that will bring us closer to the final redemption. So he constantly said, there is no time. As compared to the students of Rabbi Kook, who we're very close to because they do love Torah, they do love the land of Israel, but they constantly say, it's a long road. It's a very long road for the people of for the people of eternity. But their long road is, we see what happens from the long road. Things just go downhill. From the 1960s, from the War of '67, the Six-Day War, where we've liberated all the lands that have been conquered by the Arabs. We are now, most of those lands were already given away. And even those lands that we have kept, we haven't annexed them, and the Arab population is trying to drive us out, along with, of course, their friends throughout the world who support them. And that's the problem. The problem is that Rabbi Kahane was right. There is no time. We don't have the opportunity to wait to things develop the way we want them to. No, we have to act the way God dictates to us. He opens up the windows of opportunity, and we have to take advantage of them. That was Rabbi Kahane's message. That's what I told the people. As far as the situation today, we all see what's going on. You have to be totally blind not to understand that Rabbi Kahane was right. I think a lot of people in the past, they may not admit today that Rabbi Kahane was right, but certainly they won't argue with you. You'll tell them Rabbi Kahane is right to their face, and they won't argue with you because they know the truth. The problem is, Meir, that, and one of the main things that Rabbi Kahane taught us, we need all the Jews to come home, because the Jews in the exile could change, could make a major factor, it could be a major factor here in changing the destiny. We see, unfortunately, many of the Israelis who were born and raised in the land of Israel don't have the foggiest idea what the land of Israel means to us. They don't understand the destiny of the Jewish people. They were educated in schools that teach them socialism, that teach them to love the enemy and not love your brother. And we really need, I met at the cemetery a Jew who made an aliyah from Monsey, New York, a Haredi fellow who told me clearly that it was Rabbi Kahane's influence. He didn't even know him, but he read his writings and he came in aliyah with his family, and he's been trying to get more and more people to make aliyah from the Haredi community. This is very, very important because there is a big change in the Haredi community today, which we didn't see in the past.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, reading the writings of Rabbi Kahane are so true, because when I was a student in high school and I came across his book in the library, his book Never Again, that changed my life. And then I became involved. So when you say that this gentleman from Muncie read the writings, he didn't know the rabbi, and then that had the effect on him, because if you read the writings of the rabbi, or you have the opportunity to view any of and some of his speeches are on YouTube, if you could view them, there's absolutely no question. He was right. He was right. And you know what? And Baruch, you know, I didn't realize at the time when I was growing up and when I read the book Never Again by Rabbi Kahane, but he pointed out so much in that book. I wasn't aware that during the Holocaust, North American Jewry did not protest, did not do what had to be done to put pressure on the United States government to at least bomb the rail lines leading to Auschwitz, or to allow Jews to come in during the Holocaust as refugees. They turned the ships around. They didn't let them in. Same thing with Canada. Canada didn't let the Jews in as well. They had a policy of never again. There weren't any protests. There wasn't any outrage. But when it came to blacks and civil rights and Martin Luther King, they marched. They broke the law. They did everything they could. I didn't realize any of that until I read the book Never Again. And it's, I'm sure you could relate to that.
Yeah, 100%. I would have to say that we have to thank the Israeli government for putting Rabbi Kahane in jail, because that gave him the opportunity to write so many of his books. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had the time. And he was so prolific in writing these books that really it's just out there for us. Whoever wants to know the truth and know what has to be done for us to bring the final redemption, it's right there. It's written very clearly, and he really understood, because in my opinion, he learned the Torah in the proper way. He learned a lot of. He learned basically every day the Bible, the 24 books of the Bible, which most yeshivas, most rabbis never learn. He learned the what they call the midrash, the rabbinical ideas that are brought out of what is the destiny of the Jewish people, and what we're supposed to do to bring the redemption. These are the things that he concentrated on in his learning, and he was able to have the understanding that most rabbis don't have, because they're busy with the minutia of we call halacha, of the ritual, the daily ritual, but not with the laws the laws that involve the public, the public of Israel, the nation of Israel, that involved the conquering and liberating the land of Israel, redeeming the Temple Mount, to rebuild the temple and renew the service of the priests in the temple, to remove the enemy from the land. All of these things, these rabbis don't know, don't understand, and he constantly criticizes them for not wanting to know the truth of what the Torah dictates to us. And that's one of the main problems, because instead of them teaching these ideas that Rabbi Kahane taught us, they basically put out students that don't have this understanding, and they need to find Rabbi Kahane's books in order for them to understand. I was told, one rabbi in Jerusalem, a Haredi rabbi, said that Rabbi Kahane's book, the Jewish Idea, is the greatest book written in the Jewish world, since the book of the Vilna Gaon, Kol HaTorah, which is hundreds of years. Hundreds of years. This is a Haredi rabbi in Jerusalem stated this because it's such a great book.
Wow.
Here we see it in front of us. The book right there. The Jewish, well, here's Rabbi had his biography. All these
Right.
books are out there. He's a prolific writer, and they're translated into English and different languages. It's really, if you don't learn Rabbi Kahana's books every day, you're missing out. Even I, who was a student of Rabbi Kahana for so many years, every day I take his book and I learn for the Jewish idea, because you can never stop learning it. You need to to remind yourself of all these important ideas that he expressed.
And you know what? There should really be a regular shir of his book, or Harayon, and it should be broadcast live so people could interact and learn. Anyways, we'll deal with that, but I want to bring on Meir Jolowitz also to join us. Or stay on, but I got to bring Meir Jolowitz. You know Meir Jolowitz. We all know each other. So
Just a quick word about Meir Jolowitz, who's been on before.
no, but Baruch knows.
He's a Middle East analyst. He's the past National Executive Director of Zionist Organization of America. He was formerly associated with the Institute for Advanced Strategic and Political Studies, past National Chairman of Jewish Defense League. His background credentials go on, but most importantly today, he writes so eloquently, and if you all get a chance to read yesterday's dedication in Arutz Shiva to Rabbi Kahane, it's really worth seeing. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring Meir into the picture.
Hi.
Meir, how are you doing?
Well, a pleasure to be with you people. Thank you.
Thank you.
When we lost our rabbi 31 years ago, one heard what one often hears when we lose the giants of our generations. And people said, well, no one is irreplaceable. It's a terrible thing. No one is irreplaceable. I wrote at the time that we had lost the most noble man of our generation, and perhaps even beyond. The remarkable thing is, and the reality, that not everyone is replaceable. And 31 years later, we can see that the rabbi has not been replaced. We have been a generation and a half that remains leaderless. There has not been a replacement. The message is there, the ideology remains, but the driving force, the impact that came from the power of this incredible man, that was lost in November of 1990. That was lost. Now, it's remarkable that one speaks about Rabbi Meir Kahane, the one word that we hear most often used in association with his memory is the controversial Rabbi Meir Kahane, the controversial. And it's remarkable to suggest, and yet it is reality, that when someone stands up and talks about Jewish identity, about Jewish pride, about Jewish dignity, and about Jewish defense, that is considered controversial. And even today, I had a piece that ran both in New York and in Israel, and it's remarkable. The response has been absolutely magnificent, but it's also true that people said, wow, it's nice that someone stands up to defend this controversial idea of a Rabbi Meir Kahane. And if Rabbi Meir Kahane was indeed or is indeed controversial, so too is Judaism and the notion of Jewish pride, dignity, and defense. It's absolutely incredible. The fact that we have to come to recognize is that we, who supported the rabbi's ideology and the concept of defense that was embodied in the Jewish Defense League, we realize that we remain a minority of a minority. We are a minority of a minority. And if Jewish history is any lesson to us, that won't change. It won't change, sadly, tragically. But then again, nothing great in Jewish history has ever come from the establishment. Nothing great in Jewish history has come from the majority. It has always come from the Jewish minority, the brave and powerful souls who stood up against the majority, against the Jewish establishment, and declared much beyond the lesson of never again, but the lesson that the rabbi taught us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If I may, I too, I don't know how long this will last, and I too, is it possible, Gary, to mute some of the sound that's coming from Israel and just keep the visual? Because I don't think that some of the messages that the others who are going to speak with us today should be lost. I will tell this very, very brief story, which I think typifies the type of man that the rabbi was. We all know his public persona. We all know that every time that a New York Times would post a photograph of the rabbi, it was always in mid-sentence when you saw the anger of the rabbi when he was speaking from the bima, whatever. In 1978, and again later, but in 1978, I led a group of high school, 17 and 18-year-old high school students and high school graduates from Phoenix, Arizona to Israel. It was a 35-day trip sponsored by the AZYF. And during the afternoon of one day that we were given off, in which everyone had the opportunity to go buy their trinkets that they were going to bring back to their families, I had mentioned that I was going to go see a dear friend, a colleague, and the esteemed Rabbi Meir Kahane, who at the time was quite controversial, to use their term. And it was a group of 35 males and females. And because they'd heard so much about the rabbi in the news, they opted to join me, to give up their shopping and to go see the rabbi. I called the rabbi and told him I was coming to see him with 35, 17, and 18-year-olds in tow. And he said, fine. I met him, we met him at 31 Yushiskin Street, the Museum of the Potential Holocaust.
Yeah.
And the rabbi gave a brief 20-minute talk about why it was necessary for them as they moved on to the next stage in life, 17 and 18-year-olds, to consider Israel, the Jewish home, as the only future that they would have. And he spoke beautifully and brilliantly as he was able to touch young souls. When the brief speech was over and the people were circulating around the room to see the different displays showing the anti-Semitism in America, there was one particular fellow, I remember his name, Mike Berman, who I think today is a pediatric doctor in Tucson, who asked if he could just speak to the rabbi about his own personal destiny. And the rabbi pulled him. They sat in a corner, 2 chairs face to face, and the rabbi talked to him. And I watched the rabbi spend time with him. After 5 minutes, I was afraid that Michael was perhaps taking too much of the rabbi's time, and I indicated that he should cut it short so the rabbi could do other things. And the rabbi waved me off as to suggest it's fine. 15 minutes later, I realized this is ridiculous. The rabbi probably is troubled by the fact that he's been cornered by this 17-year-old. And I went up once again, and the rabbi asked me to sort of back off, and he continued to talk. The talk went on for one-to-one, face-to-face, went on for a half hour. After a half hour, I stepped back in, I put my arm around Michael Berman, and I thanked the rabbi so much for his time. Michael got up, thanked the rabbi, and the rabbi said something to me which I've never forgotten, and it's the type of thing that nobody understands, the nature of the man. The rabbi put his arm around me, and he said the following. He said, Meir, he said, last week, I spoke to one of the largest groups of Jewish students that I've ever spoken to. He said it was over 500 strong. And he said, I spoke to them, for 45 minutes. He said, if I would know that one Jewish soul was changed and therefore work on behalf of Jewish destiny, I will have fulfilled my mission. Having spoken to a room of an assembly of 500 people, and one would alter his own destiny, which would serve the Jewish people. And the rabbi paused and said, what's the difference if I speak to an assembly of 500 people and affect the soul of one Jew who's going to do something for the Jewish people, or if I speak to one sitting in a corner here and affect his life, that he too might do that? It's the same result. And I will tell you this, I, in my professional capacity, have come across so many so-called Jewish leaders, some very prominent names. And I can assure you that not one of them, and I know many rabbis, esteemed, who wouldn't spend a half hour sitting in a corner of a room speaking to a face that he's never met before, because the message demanded that he do that. That was the power of Rabbi Meir Kahane that others simply didn't understand. And so when 31 years ago, I was told by colleagues and friends, well, no one is irreplaceable, I, 31 years later, will argue not everyone is replaceable. And the rabbi, our rabbi, mentor, colleague, friend, is irreplaceable. We are in a leaderless world, bereft of the teachings and the courage and the power of the voice of Rabbi Meir Kahane. And it is a tragedy. It is a tragedy which the entire Jewish nation will suffer. One last thing. In 1982, I think it was, I went to a speech in Columbia, at Columbia University, and Yosef Mendelevich was there. Yosef Mendelevich, who had been incarcerated in the Soviet Union, the failed hijacking of a plane, today a rabbi himself. And I mentioned to Yosef Mendelevich when I met him that I was associated with the Jewish Defense League. And Mendelevich pulled me aside also and said to me the following. He said, during my years of incarceration, he said, there's only one person in the world, one, who I knew that when I was sleeping on the cold cement floor of a Soviet prison, there was only one Jew in the world who was also not sleeping well at night because I was, in fact, incarcerated. And that Jew was Rabbi Meir Kahane. That is irreplaceable. Anyhow, thank you.
Well put. Unbelievable. Let's bring Fern Sidman to join us. Is Fern here on? Fern, how are you? Oh, we can't hear you. Something wrong with the volume there.
So Fern, for some reason, your picture is coming through, but not your audio. So check your mic connection or see what you could do. We heard you earlier, so maybe just go out and come back in. Just redo the link, okay?
Okay, so then let her log out and log back in. In the meantime, we'll bring on Shannon Taylor to join us. Let's get Shannon up here. Shannon, how are you doing? You were associate of Rabbi Meir Kahane. You were there the evening of the tragedy of the assassination. You could, we want to hear from
if you can hear us, then you need to also probably link back in because you've been on pause for so long, it may have gone to standby. So I'll give Shannon a call. And
I think he's on now.
Ah, there you go. Okay. But he's frozen. Up there he goes, moving.
About time.
Hey, Shannon.
I was
Interesting.
there
Problem with the
time
volume.
before the
Somewhere in cyberspace, there's a problem with his volume.
Yeah, I think the problem is when people are on pause too long.
Can you
Uh-huh.
hear me?
I can hear
Barely.
you now.
That's better. Nope, now we can't.
Hello there.
Fern, can you hear us now?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Let's put
Yes.
Fern back on while Shannon reboots.
Okay.
Okay, here I am. Thank you so much for
I
having
can
me.
see you.
Oh, you want to go, Shannon? Go ahead.
This
Okay, my turn.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me here, Mayor. It's my honor and privilege. What can one say? As you stated earlier, I think it's a reminder to all of us how quickly these last 31 years has passed since Harav Kahane Zatzal was taken from us. As Baruch mentioned earlier, he was a man steeped in Torah
hello,
knowledge.
darling.
And the question, oh, well, I was speaking, but since you said hello, should I continue?
Very good. You're
Continue.
doing great for us,
Continue,
sir.
Rainier.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So as I said, Baruch reminded us earlier of, the fact that the rabbi was driven by his Yiras Hashem, his fear of Hashem, his Torah knowledge. Who is a true Talmid Chacham? Who is a person who is a true Torah, a person who's Isaac B'Torah, who's involved in Torah, a person who can see the future? And that's what Rabbi Kahane was. And he taught us that our tafkid, our job in life as Avdei Elokim, as servants of Hashem, is to not only see the will of Hashem, to disseminate the will of Hashem, to bring people closer to Hashem, but to do His will, to actually do it, not just to study it. And that is the true definition of a scholar warrior that he spoke about all the time. And the will of Hashem has always been and continues to be for the Jew to stand up for what is right. The whole essence of Judaism is sacrifice. And this is what Rabbi Kahane taught us. We'll be sacrificing for our right, our God-given right to pray on the Temple Mount, our obligation to feel connected, so connected to our people as though we are one neshama, to do everything we can for them when they are in pain. And I remember as a young child being in the Beitar Zionist youth movement and going to demonstrations for the freedom of Soviet Jewry and seeing fellow Jews in JDL out there, even stronger than we were. And I remember drawing and gaining such inspiration from them. And who was leading them? Rabbi Kahane. I mean, he was the one who went out to the alienated youth, and the protest movement, the movement that he built, would never have been successful had he not drawn in these particular youth. And there's many people who tell me today that their only connection to Jewish activism was because of Rabbi Kahane. And what did he say to them? The simple words that we recite every day in our davening, Ashreinu Matov Chelkeinu. Happy are we, how good is our lot, how wonderful it is to be a Jew. And because you are a Jew, it's your obligation, Rabbi Kahane said, through his Torah knowledge, to join with his people and be one family. And the joy of another Jew should be our joy, and their pain should be our pain. And not only did he teach us this, he role modeled it. It was his example. And I'm very honored to have been a member of JDL for many years, have been national director, of knowing Rabbi Kahane very well. And I think particularly now, we're living in a world that's very, very dangerous. And I often say to myself, what would Rabbi Kahane say if he were here today? We're in the middle, at least here in the United States, we're in the middle, and I think the whole world, we're in the middle of a Marxist revolution. We're in the middle of an emergence of a quote-unquote woke culture, a cancel culture that seeks to destroy everything we ever held dear. And in the middle of a revolution, we need to stay buoyed. We need to stay firm in our beliefs and to give pushback, to answer the enemies. And this is why Jewish unity, Jewish strength, and Jewish resolve to speak and to act is so important. And on this day, I say that the memory of Rabbi Kahane is not only cherished by all of us, but I think it's our obligation on his 31st Yortzeit, especially now during these very, very trying times, to get together and make a commitment to educate our children and grandchildren, to disseminate his knowledge to a new generation, to disseminate his books and his writings. It's up to us as the stewards of his philosophy to continue to disseminate it. And I want to thank Meir Weinstein for doing that on a daily basis. I want to thank Meir Jalowitz for doing that on his radio program in Israel, for Baruch Ben Yosef for doing that in his role, and of course my old friend Shannon Taylor, wherever he goes, he's a real dynamo, and we thank him for his courage and inspiration. And I thank you for giving me this time today. May the neshama of Rabbi Kahane have an aliyah in Gan Eden. May he continue to be a Melech Yasher, an advocate for his family, for all of Klal Yisrael. And may we, through our strength and our actions, merit be zeichet to the final redemption, and let us all see Techiyas Amesim, and let us have Rabbi Kahane back with us. B'mhera v'yameinu.
Amen. Looks like there's someone speaking right now in Jerusalem. If we could zoom in there for a moment to show everyone.
Rabbi Kreuzer.
Activism. That's Rabbi Kreuzer from the yeshiva.
כל יום חמישי בישיבה יושבים כשנחל בנהרי, שיעורים מרתקים, כשהצטרף לעוצמה יהודית, אפשר למצוא רעיונות חדשים, כל אחד חייב לצאת מהמקום הזה כשגריר של הרעיון היהודי. כמו שיש לנו בתי חב"ד, בכל מקום צריך להיות בית הרעיון היהודי. כל אחד צריך ללמוד מהבתים האלה.
At this event right now in Jerusalem, it's a packed event. Jews in Israel who heard Rabbi Kahane, who see the message of Rabbi Kahane as the future of the Jewish people. And this is the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivat Harayan Yehudit, the yeshiva of Rabbi Kahane that was established by Rabbi Kahane. He's speaking right now. Let's see who's coming on right after. Very good.
רק לבקש מהיציע החברים להיות טיפה יותר בשקט כדי לקבל את המעמד ואת הדוברים, וכמובן את הרב אילן גרויבר. תודה רבה על הדברים החשובים, והרב דיבר על התמדה בתורה. אז באמת בתוך כל הפעילות של הרב וכל המאבקים שלו ההתמודדות שלו עם אנשים שמובטח להם שבני העולם הזה, היה הרב הולך לנוק מהמעיין, למכור מים חיים, שקדנותו והתמדתו בתורה היו חלק בלתי נפרד ממנו. הרב ניצל כל רגע כדי ללמוד, על אף עיסוקיו הרבים. אהבתו בתורה לא ידע גבול, הרב ראה בה כבסיס וכיסוד לכל. וכך כתב הרב לבנו ברוך ממרחקים. אני אומר לך, כי האדם אוהב את המדינה הזאת, באותה מידה שאתה אוהב אותה, ואוהב את עם ישראל במידה שאתה אוהבו, שלא תוכל לשרת אותה במלוא יכולתך, אלא אם כן תשב ולא תעשה דבר מלבד לימוד תורה במשך כמה שנים נוספות לפחות. ובאמת, ברוך השם, אנחנו זוכים להעמיד בישיבת הרעיון היהודי פעילות של תורה, תלמידים, ובעזרת השם שילכו להנהיג ולהוביל בעם ישראל. כעת אני מתכבד להזמין את האיש האהוב הלוחם הדגול שלא נס לחו, איש חברון וממקימי ארגון האמת היהודית, אתם אוהבים אותו, ברוך מרזל.
Baruch Marzel coming on. Lives in Hebron.
ערב טוב, יהודים טובים.
ערב טוב.
אנחנו זכינו שברוך השם בשנים האחרונות כל הזמן הפעילות של תלמידי הרב זצ"ל השם ייקום דמו, של ממשיכי הדרך של הרב, בכל התחומים אתם יכולים למצוא את האנשים, אם זה בהתיישבות, בכל מקום, בכל החנית אפשר למצוא את התלמידים של הרב, אם זה אפשר למצוא את מיכאל בן ארי בכל המלחמה האידיאולוגית של הרב, ואם זה את הרב בנצי קופשטיין בנושא של ההתבוללות, בנושא של המיסיון, בנושא של הר הבית, שהוא הקים שם ישיבה, ובזכות הישיבה שהוא הקים בהר הבית היום, יהודים יכולים להתפלל שם, עד שלא קמה ישיבה, ולא הייתה שם שגרה של אנשים שמגיעים יום יום, אי אפשר להתפלל שם, השגרה, מערת המכפלה ששינתה את המציאות, ככה הישיבה הזאת שינתה את המציאות. יש לנו גם את הרב קרויזר ואלי ניימן שממשיכים את ישיבת הרי יהודים במסירות נפש, ויש לנו את יצחק וסרלוף שמנהל בכוח בגודל בעוצמה, את עוצמה יהודית. אבל רבותיי, העיקר חסר מן הספר, ובמשך השנים יותר ויותר אנחנו כולנו מבינים כמה הרב כהנא צדק. כאשר אנחנו מגיעים לאירועי לפרעות שהיו ברחבי הארץ, כאשר אני מגיע בלילה, לילה אחרי לילה, לשכונת רמת אשכול בלוד, ויורים עלינו וזורקים אבנים, ואנחנו כמובן, אנחנו מאמינים בהשבת אבדה ומשיבים את מה שצריך למי שעושה, אבל כאשר אני עומד בשכונת רמת אשכול, אני כולי רועד מהזיכרון של מורנו ורבינו הרב כהנא זצ"ל השם ייקום דמו ברמת אשכול, מתחנן לתושבים פעם אחר פעם, חבר'ה תתעוררו, האויב פה השתלט, יש פה מגמה של אנשים לזרוק אתכם מפה, לא תוכלו לחיות פה, אתם חייבים לא למכור להם דירות, ואנשים האלה מסוכנים, תיזהרו. ואנשים שמה היו אדישים ונתנו לאט 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 לסכנה לגדול ולגדול, וזה מה שראינו בעכו ובלוד, והסתובבתי באר שבע, רימוני הלם זרקו עלינו, לא זרקו על הצד השני. כמה הרב כהנא הזהיר מהפשע של הבדואים, היום כולם מבינים את זה, שהרב כהנא צדק. אנחנו החלטנו להקים את תנועת האמת היהודית, שתתרכז גם בצביון של מדינת ישראל, אבל הדגל העיקרי שלה יהיה הטרנספר. אנחנו צריכים להוציא מפה את כל אלה הבאים עלינו לכלותנו. ורבותיי, אנחנו בסכנה קיומית. אנחנו בסכנה קיומית. זה לא שאלה של אם יום אחד תהיה פה התקוממות, ואם יום אחד יקומו.
Okay, so we're going to zoom back in when Itamar Ben-Gvir gives his address, but we will bring on Shannon Taylor now, that he could share with us his association with the rabbi. And he was, like I said before, he was there the evening that the rabbi was assassinated. Shannon.
Thank you, Meir.
Good to have you.
Pleasure to finally get on.
Yes.
I've never waited so long on any other TV show in 40 years. Nor have I listened to so much Hebrew in 50 years. And I asked Fern, because she had her feet to the ground, and she said, like Rabbi Kahane said, you trust in God, and he will work his way through. I have nothing good to say of President Israel or the President Israel Party or the President America, except they love the environment. Thank God they might save the earth. But I'm going to limit my remarks to my memories of Rabbi Kahane. First of all, I engaged him to speak at every I was ever involved in. And no opposition stopped, whether it was Hebrew University, when he predicted the bomb of the cafeteria because of the Arab works. I got my degree there. And also at Temple Law School, where it was Jesse Jackson time, the start of rabid, extremist black anti-Semitism. And he addressed the whole law school. They moved us from the moot court to a classroom, and there was standing room only. And then, of course, we went on. John LeBoutelier and Barry Farber was a good friend, and Bob Grant, and everybody lost to him when they came up with their nonsense. When I would run into Mike Wallace, I gave him a number of stories, including on the so-called JDL camp, which was more of an embarrassment at that time, not the original. And he made a whole story about it, which led to Hohenlein failing to object, them being designated as a terrorist organization. And I can only think of President Trump when I think of Rabbi, with the intense animosity to somebody who's telling the truth, with the intense animosity to somebody whose truth you don't want to hear. This intense animosity to the liberal, left-wing, fascist Jews that never leave us alone. Not alone, they don't help us, but they do their best to hurt us, and they're all in the media, and they're all in Hollywood, and they're all in this minute. And they were in Roosevelt's cabinet to make sure that not one Jew got into America until Roosevelt, before Hungary's decimation and threatened to resign. And finally, you got the War Refugee Board. Wallenberg, now honored by my friend Baruch Donnenbaum, and the Raoul Wallenberg Foundation internationally. But the whole world loves Jews who are Nazis, because every country that Jews brought in the Nazi war criminals. People showing up now at 100 years old. Can you imagine? Merkel was just given a red carpet in Israel to speak German to Israel, while 100-year-old Nazis are still around Berlin and have to be put on trial. To introduce the subject of Jewish poor. No Jewish organization wanted to notice them. The Jews who welcomed so-called European Jews, they were not. But to Meir, everyone was worth it. He didn't care if they came to Switzerland. Let them just get out. One of the many disagreements we had. The Blessed Hilton Gold, rest in peace, and I, the first radio show by Kahane, New York, a predecessor to your show on television. I now host the show every Tuesday in New York, and I never compromise on Kahane. Pro-Israel, pro-environment. I had it not for profit. That first wonderful journalist aptitude of blacks, Jews, Hispanics, Asians, Muslims, everybody normal. Because the ones who are abnormal are in political office in Israel and in America. Meir Kahane was a scholar, the likes of which you cannot begin. He didn't need to be in jail, with all due respect, to write his books. He wrote most of them out of jail. He wrote columns for the Jewish press all through 30 years and more that are archival today. And a friend of his compiled them in a book. There's no end to the respect as well as fear when he ran as an officer. When they thought they had him and they made him an officer. And Janine was so peaceful, so quiet, you didn't hear a Muslim breathe. So they gave him death. His son Binyamin, who I introduced to Fox News and was profiled by Eric Shawn over and over again, together with Fern, he carried on in that tradition for 10 years. He built up the whole state of Israel with a Kahane Chai. He built up the whole America. He learned English. He learned to write beautiful. And of course, he was killed by Israel the way America killed Meir. I never thought that Meir was killed by the United States until his son on the Millennium Day as the first drive-by shooting. So the world has inherited Al-Qaeda, which formed by the assassination, and the police did nothing, and the only photographs of it, and without my photographs, and the brave goddessmen and others in Fruta who ran after Nosair armed with a magnum, and them with nothing, without them to chase him out of the Chinese taxi, and me to follow up with pictures of the Hispanic postal inspector who shot Nosair, only to see his son today pretending to be the new wave. And Stewart puts him on, and a publishing company gives him a book, and then he asks for my pictures. And when I told him you're going to have to pay a lot for them, that was the end of his asking. But you should study the real rabbi of the last century. Study him and don't let it be censored. I put books in every library, and I was a master librarian. I put him up in Tufts, where he lectured before the whole school, that now was the center of PLO support, my alma mater. And God help you in Canada. I don't even want to talk about it. The only place versus Israel itself, where oddly enough, 6 Al-Qaeda terrorists put under siege by the same British law that wrongfully imprisoned Begin. Begin used against Meir until he starved his way out when I went to Sharon, that traitor, and I said to Sharon at the time, are you allowing this? And he says, the law's the law. Then he turned to me privately away from the 1,000, and within a week, Meir was out. And then what good did it do? Because the assassination here was in a hotel with the police precinct 3 blocks away. The police took an hour to come.
Okay, Shannon. Shannon, let me ask you. So you supplied the pictures. You took pictures there when the rabbi was assassinated, and that was used in the trial?
Prosecution, without the picture I had of the gun, being a judge and an attorney and a former defense guy and a prosecutor, oh, what's important? So when we caught Nosair shot by the postal inspector, bleeding but conscious, and I stared into his face, I saw to the side the gun he had thrown away that the police subsequently do not ever think the police in Israel or America are your friends. They're no more honest than they are the black community. Don't trust them. Don't. Meir was beaten up
Okay, so
by the shin.
anyways, that's really that was
Terrible.
vital information that you supplied.
And
If
that
we
gun,
could, so
Meir,
Shannon,
that
one moment.
gun
Shannon, one
was
moment.
the
So
gun
if we could,
that
we have Baruch.
no fair use.
Shannon, thank you. We'll come right back to that, but because of time constraints, so we have Baruch in Jerusalem right now. Baruch,
Yeah.
just tell us. I mean, it's a full hall right now. You're in your office right now. It's a full hall right now in Jerusalem, and you were at the grave site earlier today of our rabbi. What kind of support is going on in Israel? What is the We see Itamar Ben-Gvir, he's in the news. He's being welcomed at incredible rallies. I mean, it's really something that we're seeing. But you're there. What's going on? Tell us what's happening with the message of the rabbi and this support for policies of the rabbi.
Well, first of all, it's hard to. Why am I hearing myself?
Well, maybe you're hearing an echo, but I could hear you fine
I'm
here.
hearing an echo. Hello?
We can hear you.
Baruch, you
Yeah,
sound
but
fine in the studio. You sound perfectly
everything
fine.
I say is being repeated.
Well, it sounds good to the audience, though. So ignore the echo.
Okay. What I wanted to say is that, unfortunately, Itamar Ben-Gvir is a good friend of mine, but you can't really say that he is representing Rabbi Kahane in the Knesset. Rabbi Kahane, first of all, would not want anybody to run for the Knesset after he was banned, and basically the Israeli Supreme Court deemed his principles to be racist and anti-democratic. He did not believe anymore in the idea of running for the Knesset. And the last book he wrote was called Referendum or Revolution. And he basically, his idea was that there is no democracy. The Israeli politicians do not honor the wish and will of the people. They do whatever they want. And then we see perfectly now how the Yamina party, led by Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, lied outrageously to their voters, their constituency, and tricked them into believing that they were really a right-wing party that would defend Jewish rights and the land of Israel. They basically sold out to the Arab population, the Arab politicians. Benjamin Netanyahu, the former prime minister, was ready to do the same thing. He had met with the leaders of the Ram party, Abbas, and he was ready to make a deal with them. So, bottom line, Rabbi Kahane would not have wanted any of his followers to run for Knesset. The fact that they do that is their own thing. They're doing their own thing, but they're not representing Rabbi Kahane or his philosophy.
But
He
what
said
is the
referendum or revolution
in Israel in
And
terms
if
of the idea?
people do not have the right to referendum, that the will of the people will be voted in a referendum, then he felt that the only resort was revolution. And we see today that we're basically in a stalemate. There is no possibility of a government through the present system that will be able to lead the Jewish people onward towards the final redemption. If anything, they're taking us backwards from the great successes that we had in the past, like the 6-Day War, and are giving up on Jewish sovereignty in the land. So the Itamar Ben-Gvir, like I said, with all due respect, and the people that are supporting him, it's not Rabbi Kahane, and it's not Rabbi Kahane's movement.
Okay.
And what can I say? There is. I believe that the answer is can only be found on the Temple Mount. Temple Mount is the source of our strength, and it is the reason for our weakness. The fact that the holiest place in the world, the place where the two temples stood, is now in the hands of the Arabs, and they can do almost anything they want on the Temple Mount. Jews are limited to visits like they're tourists. Is outrageous. And unfortunately, the Jewish people, for the most part, don't care, are disinterested. They do not go up to the Temple Mount to show Jewish sovereignty. And Meir, you were with me. You and your lovely wife were with me on the Temple Mount. You know the situation there. I don't have to tell you.
Yep.
And the interesting thing is that over the last 2 years, suddenly the police gave us the right to pray on the Temple Mount. And I believe, I have no proof, but I believe that the reason why the police allow us today to pray on the Temple Mount is that 2 to 3 years ago, the Arabs killed 2 Druzi policemen on the Temple Mount. And most of the police on the Temple Mount are Druzi policemen who understand the concept of revenge. Hello?
Yes.
You hear me? They understand the concept of revenge. And I think their revenge against the Arab murder of their brothers was to allow us to pray. And I see it every time we go up there, that when the Arabs try to stop us from praying, they turn the Arabs away and allow us the right to pray. I do not believe that it was an order from above, from the Prime Minister's office, or from the head of the police. I believe it was a decision made by the police on the Temple Mount, the Druzi police, to look aside as Jews pray on the Temple Mount and not allow the Arabs to interfere anymore with our prayer. So today, the fact that we can pray on the Temple Mount, which is something that wasn't allowed in the past, as you know, is a major victory on our behalf. And the more Jews that will come up and show the presence and pray on the Temple Mount, we can make tremendous strides and steps toward ultimately redeeming the Temple Mount.
At one point, rioters even trapped and allegedly attempted to kill a passerby who had arrived in the area to get ice cream. The driver filing a
what's going on?
Ultimately,
he was driving on Yeffet Street.
Ultimately, Mayor, that's the solution. The solution is that we really need to change the dynamic of the Temple Mount. The Jews, instead of standing at the wall of disrespect, the nations of the world called the Wailing Wall, which was a wall built by Herod, the King Herod, as a retaining wall to the Temple Mount, and to stand outside and allow the Arabs to go in and pray every day in their mosques is simply an outrage. It's a desecration of God's name. Is a sign of Jewish weakness, and really that's what I've been working on for years. And like I said, we've shown some element of success, at least on the Temple Mount, and we only need to improve on that, strengthen the presence of the Jews on the Temple Mount, so ultimately the Temple Mount is returned to Jewish hands, and then I think we can make major steps towards a final redemption. It will not come through the Knesset. It will not come through the courts. It will not come through diplomacy. It will not come through trying all kinds of ways that circumvent the real problem, which is the presence of the Muslims on the Temple Mount.
There's more and more Jews going up to the Temple Mount now, more than any other time. You're seeing that?
Yes, I was. I'll tell you, over the last month, I spent the entire day of Yom Kippur on the Temple Mount. I spent the entire day of Simchat Torah on the Temple Mount.
Wow!
I saw the more and more people coming up. We were able to do all the prayers on the Temple Mount. It's really for someone who started going up to the Temple Mount 30 years ago on a steady basis by myself for a period of time. And I was the only Jew on the Temple Mount, or with a handful of other Jews that learned in the yeshiva that I started called the Yeshiva of the Temple Mount. Mm-hmm. Today, we find hundreds and hundreds of Jews almost every day. During the holidays, it's thousands of Jews. It's really, like I said, the only place that I can see any kind of success and victory on our part, where Jewish sovereignty is beginning to return to the Temple Mount. But we need to strengthen it. It can't be that it's a matter of hundreds or thousands. Temple Mount needs the presence of tens of thousands of Jews, hundreds of thousands of Jews, and really it's a disgrace. It's an abomination. I can't understand it. I can't understand how Jews go on with their lives knowing that God's house, the holiest place in the world, the place where Isaac was brought by Abraham to be sacrificed.
Sacrificed.
Yes, I mean where King David, bought the Temple Mount for the Jewish people, to the point where the rabbis tell us that there are three places where the nations can never say it's not yours. That's the Machpelah cave in Hebron, where Abraham buried Sarah, which he bought as a burial place. It's the place of the burial site of Joseph in Shechem, and of course it's the Temple Mount that King David bought for the entire Jewish people in order to build the temple as a house to God in this world. So really, Meir, I think you can tell it just as well as I can, because you were up there, you saw it, you know the dynamic, and really, it's just I find sometimes it's like mind-boggling to me that thousands of Jews will be down, standing at the wall. I say it's talking to the wall instead of talking to God. Instead, they could be up on the top as the true children of Hashem in His house, and they prefer to be down on the bottom in the park. I call it the parking lot of the temple, which is the western wall.
It's a life-altering change the moment you go up and you experience that, and then you look at the wall. The perspective completely changes. That was
there you go. Yeah.
Let's bring
100%.
Meir Jolowitz to join us in this discussion. Meir, weighed in on this.
Yeah. I said this before, and it's really a sad commentary, that the things that and I'm honored to be invited to do this with my colleagues, my friends here, who were special, remain special, but nonetheless are indicative of the fact that those people who speak the truth that the rabbi so often preached are, as I said earlier, a minority. It's remarkable that we live in a day and an age where, and we hear it in politics every place, not only in America, but also in Israel, where people speak about, and you've heard that colloquial expression, my truth, or, well, that's their truth. The very notion that a value system can actually be somewhat amorphous that, well, this is my truth and this is your truth, is a terrible, terrible thing. It's a concept that we've tried to overcome. And I say this with deep sorrow. We aren't winning the war. We aren't winning the war. Now, what we've done is we have touched and we've reached and we've educated and we've directed our children and perhaps our friends. But nonetheless, we remain the outsiders. We remain the outsiders. The powers to be, the power brokers, are people who believe that what we preach, what the rabbi taught, the ideological element that they called Kahaneism, is their truth as opposed to the truth. And that's something that we have to come to terms with. What Baruch just said was absolutely wonderful. He's right. But nonetheless, and despite the small measures of progress that we've experienced, our biggest enemy today is the same enemy that the rabbi faced when he was the one leading the charge. Our biggest enemy is the Jew. It's the Jew, it's the opposition. And that was true also yesteryear. It was true, it's true throughout Jewish history. The one thing that the rabbi spoke about when he talked about, I remember, I can't count the number of times that I was with the rabbi when he spoke, 100+ times, of which I'm guessing in 50 or 80 of those occasions I introduced him. But there was a message that he would often bring forth when he talked about Hanukkah, about the Maccabees and such. And he said a very simple message to those people in the audience who might not have been steeped in the background that the rabbi, of course, was. And he said that the lesson of Hanukkah, that God rewards us not for succeeding, but for trying. And I think the message that we try to push today is this is a fight that needs to be fought regardless of the outcome. The outcome will be what we want it to be only if we persevere despite the odds. And instead, we remain bystanders. It's interesting that in the U.S., in the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., which I have problems with because it sort of talks about a universal suffering as opposed to a specific Jewish victim. But nonetheless, if one walks through the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., one finds a plaque on the wall with a quotation which is attributed to Yehuda Bauer, who was perhaps the most famous of the Holocaust scholars of the generation. And on that plaque is the following admonition. And it says, "Thou shalt not be a victim, thou shalt not be a perpetrator, but above all, thou shalt not be a bystander." And we're all living a world where we understand that the majority of the people that we are part of remain bystanders. And it's tragic. And it's tragic, especially given the occasion of why we today meet and speak. It's about the rabbi. It's about Rabbi Meir Kahane, the most noble man of our generation and much beyond. He was the one, he was the force that taught us not to be bystanders. And if we can do nothing more than impart that lesson to those who are meaningful to our lives, our family, our children, their children, and beyond, we will have at least done something towards that greater goal that Baruch was speaking about. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
can I interject something?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to point out, I agree, of course, with what Meir said, but I would like to interject that the major players, as far as the Temple Mount is concerned, are the rabbi students. If it wasn't for the rabbi students, the Temple Mount situation would be far worse than it is now.
Agreed.
Bentzi Gupstein, my good friend Bentzi Gupstein, is one of the major forces behind the change that's been going on in the Temple Mount. Hello?
Yes.
Itamar Ben-Gvir's wife is one of the major players. Rabbi Kreuzer and the yeshiva. All of these people are major players on the Temple Mount, and they have their influence, their activity has been part of the change that we've seen over the last few years. So, in essence, it was Rabbi Kahane's teachings, the importance of the Temple Mount, that has helped to make this change of the numbers of people that are going up and the prayer in the Temple Mount. It's clear, and it's clear to the other activists that go up to Temple Mount that the rabbi students are major players in this movement. In fact, I remember
what you just stated is so important to get out there, because many people are unaware of that. That's important to get out, that it continues.
I'll give you a couple of examples. Is back in the day, one of my good friends, Yitzhak Imas, who was murdered by the Arabs in a terrorist attack near Kiryat Arba. He originally came to made Aliyah from Russia. He was a major force in bringing Russian speakers up to the Temple Mount. His meetings were conducted in the yeshiva, in Rabbi Kahane's yeshiva. Rabbi Yosef Elbaum, who's one of the major leaders of the Temple Mount movement, he was given permission by Rabbi Kahane to use the computer in the office to put out his literature about going up to the Temple Mount. He thanks Rabbi Kahane. If it wasn't for Rabbi Kahane, he said his movement never would have gotten started. And his movement is the one that has brought up thousands of people to the Temple Mount. It's across the board. I don't think there's anybody who's intellectually honest, who's involved in the Temple movement, in the Temple Mount movement, who will deny the fact that if it wasn't for Rabbi Kahane's students, and of course Rabbi Kahane himself, the situation would be far worse than it is today.
Absolutely.
And the major strides that we've made is a testament to the fact that Rabbi Kahane stressed that a major part of the redemption of Jewish people has to be the redemption of the Temple Mount. It can't happen. It can't happen without the Temple Mount being returned to Jewish sovereignty.
Absolutely. Well said.
Well, what would be the possibilities of this, for instance, this live podcast that I have, when I'm in Israel, to do it regularly on the Temple Mount? Live.
It wouldn't be a problem.
Could we do it?
Look, we bring up. They don't confiscate your telephone and go up to the Temple Mount. If you can do it through your telephone, which they shouldn't be a problem, you can do your podcast on the Temple Mount. I mean, people bring up. They bring up their phones. They have their siddur. Their prayers are inside the phone, and they say their prayers from their phone. If you bring up a prayer book, they'll take it from you. But if you bring up your phone with the prayers in it, they won't take it from you. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but that's the reality. So you can do a podcast from the Temple Mount. You can take pictures and you can film freely. That's no problem.
Okay, it's something we have to do. There's no question about it. Maybe we could show a little bit right now in Jerusalem. I just got a message from a person there. Let's just see it.
There's Bentzi Gupstein, the man I spoke about before, who, like I said, is a major player on the Temple Mount. In fact, he recreated the yeshiva of the Temple Mount. He told me in the past, he said, creation of the Temple Mount Yeshiva, when I created it back in the 90s, he said it was the most important step. And he said it has to be renewed after the Israeli security services basically dismantled our yeshiva, and he was able to find funding and recreate the yeshiva. Today, it's a very serious, scholars are part of the yeshiva. The Rosh Yeshiva is Rabbi Weber. He's one of the most serious scholars I've ever met, and it's really changed the whole dynamic. Here we see Yossi Dayan, there's Rabbi W. Lior, Chief Rabbi of Hebron.
נכון, זה באמת קשה. לפעמים אנו מרגישים טיפה את הרדיפות ואת ההשפלות שאתה עברת. אנו עדים לעוולות הנעשות נגד יהודים טובים. אכן,
Maybe you could have the cameraman face the audience and we could look at some of the people there.
I'd like that if we could.
Did you get through them?
There
are a lot of important people sitting up right up front that I could point out. Here we go. So we see that Moshe Feiglin is sitting here. We see Yossi Dayan, Shimon Rachamim, Rabbi Lior. There's Feiglin next to Rabbi Lior, Moshe Feiglin.
כעת אני מתכבד להזמין את מורנו ורבנו מרן פוסק הדור הרב דור ליאור שליטה.
He's pulling up Rabbi Lior now, who's one of the great scholars of our generation. And obviously he wasn't a student of Rabbi Kahane, but he's always had all of our events because he shows great respect for the rabbi.
Right. Where does he live?
Well, he obviously used to live in Kiryat Arba. He retired as the rabbi of Hebron, and he lives in Jerusalem now.
Okay.
But he's obviously he's in his 80s already, so.
Right.
But as far as the let's say the settlers, he's considered the chief posek, the main rabbi that people go to for questions.
Right. Right. And I've seen him when I've attended these events. I've seen him there.
I can't hear him. I translate, but I can't hear him.
Right. Okay. Maybe our doctor in the studio, if we have a short video of Rabbi Kahane, we can put that on for everyone. Short one.
Well, I'll put one on and we can take bits and pieces, and then when more stuff is going on, let me know and I'll tune it down. Let me find the video.
Okay. So, Baruch, how regular on a schedule are shiurim happening on Har HaBayit?
I can't hear. Because of the rabbi speaking, I can't hear what you're saying.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Can you quiet the rabbi?
Message up there. Hang on. I think something's happening.
Okay.
Yes.
What was the question?
How regular are the shirim going on
No.
on Har Bayit?
Not 1 inch. Not
Every day,
1 inch back
here's
there.
the.
It's getting very late, so I'm going to take 2 more questions. The tragedy of a Jewish people that learns nothing from history and forgets nothing. You have this tremendous hang-up. How will they love us? I'm sick and tired of Jews who run around wanting love. I don't want love, I want respect. But your question was really a good one because of the fact that what you were really asking, even though you don't know it, was the question, why be Jewish at all? Because by being a Jew, you do make a difference between you and other people. And that's the question I was, let someone ask that question, because Rabbi Axelrod in all the time refused to answer that question. If indeed there is the great ethical need and goal and drive and imperative is to be a human being, then indeed let us be human beings, and you're 1,000% right. Let's stop this nonsensical Jewishness and go out into the world and stop grandizing. Let's be human beings. It's a good question. I hope that Rabbi Axelrod will answer it. Let me answer your question my way. There's a God, He has the truth, and He gave it to us. Now that doesn't make us racists. A racist is someone who says, I'm better than you and you can never be as good as I. That's blacks, whites saying that about blacks, blacks saying that about whites. We Jews say, yes, we have the truth, and we are a chosen people. But any non-Jew who wants to, it's open. Take it and become Jewish, and you can be as good as I am. Torah is truth, and the way to achieve a status of being holy and lofty is through Torah. And that's why the Jew has to be separate, has to be different. And if there's no Torah, then you're right. Then you're right. I can understand you, and I can understand me. And both of us will have great, great trouble understanding Rabbi Axelrod. I hope that someday they won't break your hearts. And I say they, the non-Jews. Because just as the German Jew was shattered, the Polish Jew was never shattered. The Polish Jew always knew that the Gentile was capable of doing exactly what was happening. He lived under no illusions. The German Jew was shattered. How could this be happening? I'm a German. I'm a human being. How can you do this to me? And the German came and said, you're a Jew. If you won't learn Torah, someday you'll learn it the hard way. So why not? Someday they'll persecute you as a Jew. At least get the benefits of it. Go to a Jewish school. Don't go to Brand. Go to a Jewish school. Go to a yeshiva. Find out what there is about being Jewish which is special and important, which makes you a Jewish and different and separate, and you can be separate and at the same time respect other people. You can be separate and you can respect other people. But know that first you're a Jew. Before I turn that same question over to Rabbi Axelrod, I would like to say that I'm informed that we do in fact have the room for a little bit more time, so if people are game, we can go a little bit longer. Rabbi Axelrod.
Ideally speaking,
there doesn't have to be a conflict between being a Jew and being a human, nor was there intended to be. My belief is that we are part of a divinely elected people, very much so. I think people who listened heard me say that. I went on to say that we were chosen not for privilege and not for prerogative, and certainly not for superiority, but we were chosen for responsibility. And I believe that through and through. Not in some of the ways that were misrepresented by my colleague tonight, but in principle and in theory, I believe through and through that we are part of the people chosen, divinely elected, to represent in the world the will of God, to pursue in the world what God wants to see unfold in history. And we are God's partners. Seems to me I said that. And we are God's witnesses. Seems to me I said that, even in the original. And so my colleague may find it difficult to conclude what I believe on this score. For me, it's quite plain, and I trust for those of you who listened, it's also not terribly obscure or difficult. We are born into our people. We are born into the chosen people. It is a people that admits others, but doesn't go looking for them. And at the same time, however, it is a people that is here to pursue God's will for the world. God's will has to do with the justice and the unfolding of a plan of peace for the world. And that is our obligation. So as far as I'm concerned, though of course there have been countries in which we have been persecuted, and of course there have been non-Jewish societies and governments that have detested us and persecuted us and oppressed us and murdered us. Yes, that's happened, but that hasn't happened through all of history. The blood and tears approach that my colleague dwells on, that's not the leitmotif of all of our history. There have also been societies and countries where we've been welcome and where we've flourished and where we've prospered and where we've contributed greatly to society and to culture as we have to world culture. And so I ask you not to go around as paranoids. That's uncalled for. Vigilant, yes. Paranoid, no. And
yeah. There's a complete difference between what Rabbi Kahane said and what that other rabbi who was debating Rabbi Kahane had to say. A complete difference. And anti-Semitism today is on such a rise. Every single college campus and high schools now are breeding grounds for anti-Semitism. And the liberals, such as that Rabbi Axelrod who debated Rabbi Kahane, they're responsible for bringing such an illusion to the Jewish community. There's no question about it. Jews living outside of Israel, that's certainly not the future. It never has been the future. And as Rabbi Kahane said, the Jewish future is for Jews to live in Israel and to make Israel a Jewish state. And what Baruch was talking about of the Har HaBayit, that is the holiest site for the Jewish people, and to reestablish prayer on Har HaBayit and go step by step as is it's happening. And it's amazing when Baruch talks about for the past 30 years, he has been going up and either by himself or in small groups. Now we see thousands of people going up, at least during the Chugim. This is the direction. This is the direction set by Rabbi Kahane. And when Baruch mentions that it's his students that are leading the charge and leading the path on Har HaBayit, that's amazing. That's an incredible accomplishment of his followers. Is Baruch still here with us? So
I'm here.
Great. So Baruch, shed some more light on Har HaBayit. You just saw that video with the rabbi, and he's going on about the how temporary the exile is for Jews. Doesn't matter where. German Jews, it was all shattered to them. The illusion. I can imagine what it was like living in Germany. It must have been just like the United States. This is fantastic, and then all of a sudden, it's not fantastic. Where's Baruch?
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
For some reason, I don't know. There's no video.
Oh,
You hear me?
I could hear you perfectly. Yes, I could hear you perfectly.
In any event, the what I was talking about as far as the Temple Mount goes, I remember when I first, right after Rabbi Kahane was murdered in 1990, I actually joined the yeshiva in order to show support for the yeshiva at the time. I studied in the program under Rabbi Kreuzer, and that's when I began to go to the Temple Mount. As the yeshiva itself, the students of the yeshiva would go up once a week. And at the time, really, that was one of the few groups, as a group, that went up on a steady basis to the Temple Mount. I remember Rabbi Elbaum from the Movement to Restore the Temple used to come to the yeshiva, and he knew that for the most part, these were the activists that he could rely on to go up to the Temple Mount on a steady basis. So it didn't begin yesterday. It's been going on for tens of years that the rabbi students have been going up to the Temple Mount.
Right.
Ultimately, it caught on to other groups and other people, but these people, for the most part, know that it's the rabbi students that have been able to change the dynamic of the Temple Mount. And it's not only Bentzi Gubstein and Itamar Ben-Gvir's wife and myself and other people. There are all kinds of young activists that we don't even know for the most part, but they are students of the rabbi, and they go up on a steady basis to the Temple Mount. In fact, I'll tell you a very short story. I was, as a lawyer, I represented a group of Jews who had gone into the Kever Yosef in Shechem, the burial site of Joseph in Shechem. They went in there one night to pray, obviously against without a permit from the army, and the army ultimately caught them and arrested them, put them on trial for violating the military orders, not allowing them into the burial site of Joseph in Shechem. So I represented them in the court. These were basically 5 young Jews, including one of them was my son. And I'm sitting there during a recess of the hearing, and they start discussing from Rabbi Kahane's book the Jewish idea, and they're quoting verbatim by heart from the even stuff that I didn't know by heart. And I was like shocked that these were not not all of them were known to be activists of the Rabbi's movement, but yet they knew the book, they had learned it. It turns out, in fact, that there are rabbis who are not known as being students of the rabbi, yet realized the importance of the book of the Jewish idea and took it upon themselves to teach students in all kinds of different yeshivas the teachings of the rabbi. So today there are so many people that are students of the rabbi without even being officially recognized as being students of the rabbi, that have learned the Jewish idea. And I think it's really filtered down to the grassroots of these yeshiva students, the hilltop youth, the people who go up to the Temple Mount. So in many ways, you can't really even measure the effect that Rabbi Kahane had, because it's so expansive to all kinds of different groups that are active out there in settling the land and going to the Temple Mount and so on, that it's really, deep down, it's really amazing.
It's, we're watching, could you imagine, after 2,000 years, what we're seeing? It's incredible. It's incredible. It's incredible, the progress. It's incredible that the students of the Rav continue undeterred.
Well,
undeterred.
I say it's impossible that all of these great teachings of the rabbi would not have an effect.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's hard for us to even understand of what effect it's had, because it's not like it's not something that is so understandable. It's not something that you see clearly until you really investigate and understand the background of all kinds of changes amongst Israeli society, in the essence of, for the most part, like I said, the hilltop youth, the young Jews who settled Judea and Samaria, go up to the Temple Mount. In fact, for many years, probably still till this day, there were programs for these hilltop youth in the yeshiva. I remember Nati Ozeri, God should avenge his blood, who was the rabbi's main student, had regular classes for these hilltop youth at the yeshiva. And like I said, it's impossible that this influence didn't filter down to the rank and core of the settlement movement, the Har Bayit movement, the Temple Mount movement, and so on.
Excellent. Excellent. Listen, we've been on for 2 hours already. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It's so important to remember the rabbi, and by using social media, we're able to get the message of the rabbi out there. I want to thank everyone, and please share this on the various platforms that you have. And let's remember, and let's just say, Kahane Sadek, the rabbi's right about everything. Everything, his whole vision for the Jewish people, 100%, 100%. And Jews should be proud of our heritage and the Torah, and the ideology of Rabbi Kahane is the idea from the Torah. And that's it. That's it. There's no contradiction. You see what's going on in diaspora, that the majority of Jews are giving up Judaism completely. And you have to connect with the Torah, and you have to connect with Israel, and you have to connect with that vision for the future. And that's what the Parsha was that we just read in Shul, Be'era, that when Abraham and Isaac go to make the Akedah, and that's on the Temple Mount, and that's the vision of Jewish destiny. You have no fear, because there's nothing to fear when you're connected to God and our destiny. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us, and we'll continue. Thank you very much.
We'll close. We'll play a little Hatikva for the closing song, if anybody is still listening. I think it's appropriate. And I just found this article while I was searching around of Baruch Ben Yosef, whose home was searched. Again, under what reason, what grounds? I read the whole article. I still couldn't figure it out. So let's find Hatikva. And the other thing I thought would be appropriate also is in honor of Rabbi Kahane. We play a quick Kaddish, and then we'll go to the Hatikva, and then we'll close out.
Thank you.
ויגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה וילמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחיי חול וביומי חול ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ואימרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מברך לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה יתברך 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 וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשא בריחו לילה לילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה ושבחתה ונחמתה דמירה ועלמה ואימרו אמן יתקבל צלותון ובאותון בכל בית ישראל ותמה בוהון ונשמיה ואימרו אמן יהי של המרבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואימרו אמן עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואימרו ואימרו ואימרו
Amazing. Amazing.
נפש יהודי
הומיה
ולפתן מזרח קדימה
עין לציון צופיה עוד לא אבדה תקוותנו שנות 2000 להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון ירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון
שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל